Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Hack, and in this video, you're checking out an extremely powerful Magicka Templar build updated for the Flames of Ambition, as well as the Blackwood chapter in ESO. This is going to be our Nova Shield solo Magicka Templar, complete with 5 damage shields. Some of them you don't even have to cast, for absolutely insane survivability. So if you want to solo any content in this game, whether it's world bosses, dungeons, or arenas, this is one of the strongest builds you can use. And we'll be going over everything you need to know to make it work, including the gear sets, skills, champion points, even companion options for the Blackwood chapter. We've got a lot to talk about, and it starts right now. All right, everybody, we are back on one of my favorite builds of all time, that, of course, being the Magicka Templar solo build, Nova Shield. We'll be updating this for Flames of Ambition, as well as the Blackwood chapter, so stay tuned. We'll talk about both of those expansions coming up in this video. But buff stats to start with, let's go ahead and check that out. So we need some potion action. Might as well run our minor sorcery as well and check out the buff stats. So 34,000 max Magicka, 25,000 max health, 12k max stamina, 1,200 Magicka recovery. Spell damage does go up over 4k with a back bar glyph. And then our resist looking pretty decent, 26,000 spell resist, 16,000 physical resist. Of course, your defense comes primarily from damage shields on this build. We have about 4 different damage shields, so the survivability is amazing on this setup. Now we do have 64 points into max Magicka, obviously being a Magicka Templar. Food really is up to you. You could use blue food, max health, max Magicka. You could use tri-stat food with a little extra max health. I'd recommend that for more difficult content if you need to block and roll dodge a lot. And then the Thief Mundus is going to be pretty good because we want to get our spell critical and critical healing as high as possible on the setup. We'll talk about that in a little bit. What else? Potions, we talked about spell power potions. You can also run the basic Magicka potions if you want to slot degeneration. That's always an option on the Magicka Templar. And then finally, in terms of race, really anything is okay. This build casts a lot of abilities, so I think Breton will be very nice, especially if you're a beginner and you want to pick up Magicka Templar maybe for the first time. The extra cost reduction of Breton is going to be very nice, especially against world bosses where you need that extra bit of sustain, but you can also get much more damage with High Elf or Dark Elf. Even Khajiit is going to be pretty nice for overall damage on this build. So really it's up to you and what you want to focus on. Of course, Breton also gets the extra resists. The extra recovery is nice, and the extra max Magicka is always good. So those are the optimal races. But I think that covers all the basic stuff. So let's talk about the gear sets next. Starting with our first 5-piece set. This is going to be the crafted set Torug's Pact. This set is fairly easy to craft. I think it's like 2 or 3 traits is all you need. But what this does, you can see it gives you armor, gives you health, gives you more armor. So some great defensive buffs here. But it also decreases your enchantment cooldown and buffs your enchantment potency by 45%. So what we're doing with this on the Nova Shield build that we've done for many patches now is we're going to run this with a damage shield enchant. You can see on our back bar, we're using the Hardening enchantment, which is a free damage shield. And with Torug's Pact, as well as some CP and other things that we're throwing in here, almost a 7k free damage shield every 5 seconds. And it's quite powerful. I decided to throw this on the back bar because if you run Wall of Elements, you basically always have that buff on your character every 5 seconds. Even if you take too much damage, it's going to come back 5 seconds later. So it's a really nice defensive tool. It's automatic. You don't have to think about it, so it's really strong. Front bar staff, I've got the weapon damage enchantment on this one. So I've got 2 Torug's Pact lightning staff, lightning staves. I think it's staves. Whatever, I've got both of them. Front bar, I went with precise. You can also do Nirnhoned on the front bar. You could even do infused for some more power on that weapon damage enchant. But precise is going to be nice, and you'll see why with our second set coming up. So lightning staff, spell damage, precise, lightning staff, infused, very important with the damage shield enchant. That ensures you get as much damage shield out of this one as possible. And then 3 pieces of jewelry. We've got the Torug's Pact necklace, 2 rings, spell damage enchants on all of those, bloodthirsty on all of those. You can also put a couple infused traits if you want. But that's going to be our first 5-piece set. Which leads us into the second one. That's going to be Combat Physician. This is a dungeon set from Wayrest Sewers. Pretty interesting light armor set. It gives you max magicka, 2 spell critical bonuses, which is nice. And then for the 5-piece, when you critically heal yourself or an ally, you grant them a damage shield for about 5,000 damage for 6 seconds, and that can occur once every 6 seconds per target. So this is yet another free damage shield, 5k free damage shield. This will work on you, this will work on your group, even on a companion if you want to run a companion in the Blackwood chapter. This set is pretty nice for that, and all you need to do is critically heal yourself or an ally, and that's very easy to do on the Magicka Templar. We'll talk about that in the skills section coming up. So I've got 5 pieces of this on the body. Very cool set. We've got the light chest, waist, hands, legs, and feet, all divine traits if you can get those with the max magicka enchant on there. That's going to be a nice option. And then for our monsters set, speaking of damage shields, we're running the classic Ice Heart set. This gives you more spell critical, and then when you deal crit damage, you have a chance to get this other damage shield for about 6,000 damage absorbed every 6 seconds as well. It also does frost damage in an AoE. So it's pretty nice also. And again, this is automatic. You don't have to cast any damage shield. You don't have to think about it. This is going to proc automatically, just like your Combat Physician will proc automatically, just like your back bar damage shield glyph will proc automatically. I think you guys get how this build works. It's really powerful. So that is the gear sets. We got Combat Physician, we've got the Torag's Pact weapon and jewelry, and then Ice Heart for the monster set. All light, by the way, 7 pieces of light is very important. And then all divines if you can get it with the max magic enchants. I'll have more gear options for you in the written guide. Make sure you check that out if you want to extend the build a little bit further. But let's go ahead and jump into the skills next. Starting with our front bar, we've got Radiant Glory from the Dawn's Wrath Templar skill line. This is going to be our Execute. It's a very strong Execute. Deals bonus damage the lower health your enemy is. And you also get healed for 20% of the damage done. Remember, if that crits, that's going to give you a chance to proc Combat Physician, which is very nice. Next up, we got a Flex Spot. Channeled Acceleration is going to be nice for just real easy content, normal dungeons, normal bosses, that kind of thing. That comes from the Psijic Order skill line. Third ability here. So this is going to give us some extra movement speed as well as minor force. That's 10% bonus critical damage, which is really effective on this build. Speaking of damage shields, you also get a free damage shield for blocking when you have that any Psijic Order ability slotted. So this is going to stack on top of all of the other damage shields that we have, which is really cool. Next up, Inner Light from the Mages Guild. This is just passive stats for the most part. The extra max magicka is good. Also, you can run basic magicka potions if you use this, as well as degeneration on your back bar. That's going to give you your 2 essential buffs for spell damage. This one gives you spell critical. Then, of course, the main spammable DPS skill for the Magicka Templar, that's going to be Puncturing Sweep. Does AoE damage in front of us, magic damage, heals us for 40% of the damage done. And then finally, Elemental Drain. That comes from the Destruction Staff skill line, second to last ability here. We have a lot of abilities that we're casting on this build, on the Magicka Templar. Even running a Breton, you will want a little bit of extra sustain, especially against bosses, where you might not have like enemies that you're killing to get resources back. So Elemental Drain serves that purpose really well. It's also great in dungeons to debuff the boss's resistances a little bit more, letting your abilities do more damage. So yeah, make sure you're debuffing, especially bosses with Elemental Drain on the front bar. That's really important. And then we've got the Nova Ultimate, Solar Disturbance. That's from Templar Dawn's Wrath. This is just a nice debuff and AoE ultimate. So major maim on all targets, reduces their damage done to you by 10%. And it also does some pretty solid AoE damage over the duration. So it's good. It's got a reduced cost to this patch as well. So definitely recommend that for your front bar. Now in terms of the back bar, we've got Blockade of Storms, or Elemental Blockade if you want to go with the basic ability. That's, of course, from the Destruction Staff skill line, second ability here. And this you just want for consistent proccing of that glyph. Remember the back bar glyph? We've got that, 7,000 damage shield. So this is going to consistently proc that every 5 seconds. For about 14, 15 seconds, it'll keep it up automatically as long as you have that ability going. You can combine that with another damage over time, really powerful ability called Vampire's Bane. This has the same duration, 14 seconds. This is single target though, so you'll want to save this just for the big bosses. But that also gives you some nice passives for casting that also. Next up, Honor the Dead from Restoring Light. That's our heal first skill that you get on the Magicka Templar. This is really just an emergency heal. It's nice to have this on the back bar. In case you're taking some damage, you won't have your sweeps going to heal you as much on the back bar. So having that extra heal is nice, just for emergencies. And then our 2 buffs, Extended Ritual is also from Restoring Light. That's the 4th ability. This gives us a nice AoE heal over time. You can also cleanse negative effects. And then Channeled Focus is our last buff. This gives us that Major Resolve, Physical Resist, and Spell Resist, plus some extra healing and Magicka Sustain. This can crit now, by the way. This is new for the Blackwood chapter. You'll get about 1,000 health every 1 second when you're standing in the rune. And if that crits, that of course can proc Combat Physician, keeping your damage shields up for free. Backbar Ultimate's really up to you. Crescent Sweep is a nice option because you do get some passives for having Adric Spear abilities slotted. So we'll talk about that in just a second, but I do recommend that. And then I just forgot one thing on the front bar. If you're facing really difficult content, I would recommend putting a damage shield here. You can either put it in the spot for Inner Light or for Channeled Acceleration. And the shield that I recommend is the Light Armor Shield, Dampen Magic. You can see the tooltip on this, 12k damage shield for 6 seconds. This can be really nice against some tough, hard-hitting enemies, especially if you have multiple enemies hitting you at once. You do have 3 damage shields already, but enemies can hit hard, especially when you're wearing light armor. So I would recommend throwing that on just for some more difficult content. If you put on the front bar, you can put that buff on. You can buff that shield before you bar swap, redo your buffs and your dots on the back bar. Bar swap back and you'll be good to go. Start sweeping again. So I think now's a good time to talk about that rotation since we're kind of talking about it already. So I've got a world boss over here and we'll just show you basically how it goes. So in terms of buffs, all you need is your potion. If you have access to Channel Acceleration, obviously buff that. It's a nice long-lasting buff. And then you want to buff your 2 back bar skills right there. Vampire's Bane, Elemental Blockade. Make sure he's debuffed with Elemental Drain, and then it's just sweep. So you want to hit about 5 or 6 sweeps until your back bar dots and buffs start to go down. You can see those are going pretty low, so I'm going to recast those. I'll go ahead and cast my buffs as well, and then just come back. Once Elemental Drain gets low, recast that. Recast Channel Acceleration if that's getting low. Do sweeps again. Ready for the back bar dots. Make sure you refresh your potion when that's ready. Just my heals on the back bar. Keep up Elemental Drain. If the boss is off balance, you can do a heavy attack. That actually gives you more sustain back. So again, super easy. You can see my health is barely even moved this entire fight. And we're getting close to execute range. Let me drop my ults. About 30%. You can do the you can use your Templar execute. Should be enough to finish him off. Why not? There we go. All right, let's talk about the passives next. For the Magicka Templar, what do you need to make it work? Well, Adric Spear, you have a lot of offensive passives here. Piercing Spear gives you 10% crit damage. That's why we want a Adric Spear ability slotted on our front and back bar. Got Puncturing Sweep on the front bar. Got Crescent Sweep on the back bar. That's how you get the most out of that passive. Spear Wall Minor Protection while you're casting that sweep is very nice too. Extra damage reduction. Burning Light, you'll get some good magic damage. Balanced Warrior, you get the weapon damage. Not so useful on Magicka Templar, but the extra spell resist is nice. Now, Dawn's Wrath, some of these are very powerful. I do recommend you get all of them, basically. So, Enduring Rays increases your duration of these abilities. Prism, you get the ultimate back. And then Illuminate, we talked about minor sorcery for the Magicka Templar. That's an extra 10% spell damage for 20 seconds. That's a great one. And then Restoring Spirit reduces the cost of all of your abilities, which is also quite strong. Restoring Light is more of your healing and group-focused passives. So for a solo build, you won't need all of these. Keep in mind, some of these do affect your resurrection time. Master Ritualist, for example, increases your res speed. This can actually be used with companions as well, so you might want to consider that even on a solo build like this. Now, in terms of weapon passives, we're running double Destruction Staff, so you'll just want all of these. And then Light Armor, you'll want all of these as well. You get the extra cost reduction, Magicka Recovery, Crit Chance, and Spell Penetration now for wearing 7 pieces of Light Armor. If you are using the Channeled Acceleration ability, if you have Psijic Order unlocked, that extra damage shield that we talked about is called Concentrated Barrier. So 5750 damage shield anytime you block. That's definitely worth picking up. And then you will, of course, want your racial skills and then Alchemy Medicinal Use for the extra potion duration. Champion points next. Starting in the green tree, we'll be taking a look at the Blackwood PTS champion points, which are just slightly different compared to Flames of Ambition. Now, if you want to see both versions, make sure you check out the written guide. I'll have both Flames of Ambition and Blackwood CP layouts for this build there, plus different options for 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP. But in the green tree, we always start with Steed's Blessing. That's 20% extra movement speed. Then I like to jump over to Gilded Fingers, get that extra gold, and then just fill out some of these. Fortune's Favor, Wanderer. You don't have to max these out. Just put the first stage to get to the next one, which is Steadfast Enchantment. Now, this did get nerfed slightly for the Blackwood chapter. You can no longer have 100% chance to not consume your glyph. It's now 50% at max, but I still think this is useful. It's going to make those glyphs last longer. And glyphs are a big part of this build since we are using Torg's Pact with the spell damage and the damage shield glyphs. Very important. Might as well pick up Treasure Hunter, increase the quality of items you find in treasure chests. And then I do like Rationer for the extra duration of your food or drink buffs. And then Liquid Efficiency, which is kind of helpful, especially if you're using spell power potions. Just have a chance not to use those up quite so often. So that really hasn't changed. Blue Tree is changing very slightly for the Blackwood chapter. Basically, you'll find that some of the passives are like 20 points instead of 40. That was kind of the main thing. And then we also have one new star that we're actually going to use for damage. So we're still going to start with Precision. 20 points now maxes that out. That's going to let you head to Extended Might, which is our sub-constellation. Go ahead and max out Piercing, and then Flawless Ritual and War Mage. These just give you some extra damage, some extra status effect chance. And then you have 3 pretty powerful damage stars here. We have Biting Aura. This directly buffs your Puncturing Sweep because that is an AoE effect. But we now have Master at Arms, which is also going to buff that since it is direct damage. So you get a nice buff, about 20% buff to your main ability, which is Puncturing Sweep, from combining Biting Aura and Master at Arms. Now, it may be a bug, I'm not sure, but this doesn't buff the tooltip currently on PTS, but it is increasing the overall damage, so I do recommend checking that out still. Then, of course, Thaumaturge, since we are running mini damage over times, especially on the back bar, you're going to buff those by another 10%. So these are all your slotted stars. And then for the final one, you can come back here to Fighting Finesse. That's an extra 10% crit damage and crit healing. That's going to go very nice on the Magicka Templar. If you have any extra points beyond that, you can come down here to Staving Death. This is our defensive sub-constellation, and these actually got adjusted a little bit too. So still 10 points into Quick Recovery. Now all it takes is 20 points into Preparation to get 10 points damage reduction. This is actually really good, especially for solo players. 10% damage reduction for only 20 points is a huge advantage. You may actually want to get that a little bit earlier if you're struggling. And then you can also combine that with Hardy and Elemental Aegis. Again, 20 points is going to max these out for your physical and then elemental resistance types. And then finally, the red tree really hasn't changed too much. You'll find that you have more points to spend, I think, in the red tree. So we'll get the usual: Boundless Vitality, more health; Ironclad for more armor; Rejuvenation for more recovery. And then you can work your way up through Sprinter, Hasty, Hero's Vigor, and then eventually get to Bastion. Of course, Bastion's going to buff all of our damage shields, including the damage shield that you get from Psijic Order, your damage shield glyph on your back bar, basically everything. So this is very important in terms of making this build the most effective it can be. And then everything else is just passive. You can get more tumbling, Defiance for the break-free cost reduction. If you have more points, you could even put it into Tireless Guardian, Fortification. That's what I would recommend there. Now, I did want to include a section on companions specifically made for this Magicka Templar solo build. I think companions are a great addition to any type of build, but for solo builds, they can be especially useful. Now, in terms of the Magicka Templar, the Nova Shield builds, we have plenty of healing, we have plenty of survivability and damage, so my approach for building a companion that would sort of amplify my build is just to focus on buffs, as well as extending that theme of using damage shields. I was actually able to get 2 more damage shields out of my companion, which brings the total amount of damage shields on this build to 7 if you count your Psijic Order, as well as the 2 damage shields that your companion can bring. That's a lot of shielding, but it is actually quite useful because everything is happening at different times. So we're actually using Bastion as the companion to go with the Magicka Templar because he has I think some unique buffs that really play well with the Templar's abilities. In terms of the gear that you want to use, the weapon really doesn't matter as much. Restoration Staff is nice if you want to run like an extra heal over time. But I would say any ranged weapon that's going to keep Bastion sort of away from danger is going to be good, because we're also going to use light armor, full 7 pieces of light armor with the Quicken trait, as well as Quicken Jewelry if you can get it, just to reduce his cooldowns as much as possible. And again, keeping him at range. So we're going to start first ability, Basalt Barrier. This comes from his Ardent Warrior skill line. This gives you and Bastion a free damage shield for 6 seconds. It also increases your healing received while you have the damage shield active, which is a pretty cool, unique buff. Speaking of buffs, another unique buff that Bastion can offer is Searing Weapons. This increases your light and heavy attack damage by 20% for 8 seconds. Really strong there. And then check out Skeletal Aegis. This you can get by running Undaunted quests with Bastion, and it's basically like his version of Bone Shield. It gives you a 50% damage shield for 6 seconds, though this does have a pretty long cooldown, but you actually get it by activating the synergy. So you can save the synergy for emergencies, and when you start to drop low on health, pop that damage shield. It's a really, really strong option. I wanted a little bit of ranged damage for Bastion, so I threw on the Starfall ability. This is from the Mages Guild companion skills. Again, you can get these by running Mages Guild dailies to unlock those on Bastion. Super quick cooldown on this one, 5.5 seconds. Does pretty decent damage, and it basically looks like a meteor, so it's quite impressive looking, I would say, having him cast that from range. And then finally, we were trying the Haste ability. This comes from the Companion Light Armor skill. When Bastion casts this, it resets all of his cooldowns again. Now, if you need to see more details about these skills, where they come from, make sure you check out the written guide. As I'm updating my solo builds, I will be including a section for companions, so make sure you check that out if you have any more questions. Finally, in terms of the outfit style, how do you make this work? If you want this specific look, the armor styles here, I believe this is the Wayrest Guardian. That'll cover all the body pieces, and then we're using that for the staff as well. All right, everybody, and with that, that's going to wrap up our solo Magicka Templar build update for the Flames of Ambition DLC, as well as the Blackwood chapter. Hope you all enjoyed this one and you found it informative. Of course, if you did, don't forget to crush that like button. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below, and make sure you're subscribed right here at HTM for more build videos just like this one. We got some gameplay here at the end so you guys can check out how the build feels and plays. Of course, I am a little biased because this is probably one of my favorite builds of all time, but I think you'll enjoy it just as much as me also. Now, if you have any questions about the build, skills, champion points, even companions, remember to check out the written guide. There will be a link for that in the description and the pinned comment below. We've got much more information there for you. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.